You're locked in to the Grain Market Talk podcast. Fast updates, market movers, and the grain news you need right now. Trading commodity futures and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors.
All right, today's Friday. We're going to do a little grain talk here. Thanks for tuning in. Reminder, click the link in the description to sign up for our daily market commentary, get fast insights into the ag markets and so much more. Also, check out our website at professionalagmarketing.com. All right, today I've got Jaden with us here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the planting progress this week. We're going to talk about the wheat market, and then we're going to talk about a soybean rally. How's it going?
It's going good, Mike. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Going into a nice weekend, had a lot of planting progress out in the countryside this week. Tell me a little bit about how the U.S. was sitting on Monday to start off this week on planting progress, Jaden.
Yeah, Mike. So overall, the U.S. was about 11% planted on corn. That's right in line with last year and a little above the 5-year average of 9%. But the thing that kind of stood out to me was probably the progress Iowa had on Monday. So last year they were about 16% planted as of April 19th, and this year they're about 2% planted, so that stands out just a bit. The biggest producing corn state was a little behind there with some precip they've received over the past week or two, but with the conditions this week and most row crop farmers are pretty well equipped, I think we should have made a lot of progress this week.
I think so too. A lot of the row crop farmers we work with here, almost everybody started this week, it seemed like. Even the guys in Iowa, for most part. Eastern Minnesota started. I know Missouri, Michigan, Wisconsin, that area did get hit on Thursday night again, so they maybe got planted for a day or two through a lot of those areas. But locally here, I'd say you're probably done with one crop. Like you've probably finished planting corn, just starting on soybeans before this weekend's rains. This area here around like Sioux Falls, western Minnesota, we missed out on the rain last night. You go a little further east, they did get rain again and got rained out. So still really wet in Iowa. It'll be limited progress, but I do think that it'll be a pretty big jump week over week in progress. Thing that stands out yet again this year is compared to the 5-year average, you continue to plant soybeans at a faster rate in the United States, and that showed it again in Monday, and it will again next Monday. So one of the things, I sent Kate a couple weather maps. I'll have him pull up here just on those recent rains and a little bit of the forecasted rain. So this one here, I believe, Kate, was this the past 7 days. So you can see that a little bit wet to the east, still absolutely nothing in the western corn belt for Nebraska specifically, and South Dakota and western Minnesota. We're dry up here, so we would love a nice inch of rain here. In the next map, you're going to see that we're going to be looking, this is an AI map, which I thought was interesting. It kind of combines, it seems like, the Euro model and the GFS, so it's a little more accurate than just picking one of the two. I feel like it kind of combines them. It looks like we're maybe going to get an inch of rain here until about Tuesday, hopefully over the weekend, Sunday, Monday, and that'd be very welcome. And then this model actually I thought was interesting because the eastern part of the Corn Belt there, kind of eastern Iowa, it didn't show quite as excess of rain in that part of the world, which I thought would be a little bit more beneficial to planting progress, Jaden.
Right, in eastern Nebraska and eastern South Dakota, they kind of need it right now, so it looks like over the, weekend here, we'll get some good rainfall in those areas.
I think so too. We've got their planting progress report out on Monday, so that'll be interesting to watch here in the rains over the weekend. Maybe we'll trade a little bit of it, but probably not. Looking at a few other things, let's talk about the wheat market here. When I look at the wheat market, and, most of the day here was pretty quiet across the egg space, at least midday. But the volatility in the recent sessions, Jaden, it's been really centered around the wheat market and on those prices, just given the back half of yesterday's surge higher and then a little bit of a pullback today. Energy prices, those as well. That's been a really two-sided trade. Not a whole lot going on there. No significant change in the standoff between the U.S. and Iran for the Strait of Hormuz and the ceasefire. So while the fragile U.S.-Iran ceasefire appears to be holding for now, the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports continues for the time being. So that's far from over, but a little bit quieter this week after the ceasefire did get put on after Vance canceled his Pakistan trip and Trump put that ceasefire on. So a little bit of a taco again here, and the situation, anyways, didn't really escalate any further on that portion of things. But the wheat market's interesting, and there are a few things I really want to focus on with the wheat market specifically. One would be the balance sheet. Now, Kate, if you got it, cool, bring it up, no big deal otherwise. But one of the things we are looking at is the wheat balance sheet in the United States is pretty flush still for old crop. We have plenty of wheat around, high ending stocks. So even if we have a poor crop here in the United States this year, doesn't matter really. We've got enough to carry out into new crop. But here's the thing. We have a pretty high percentage of the United States winter wheat production is in a drought right now, the highest since 22, I believe, Jaden. That's a problem. Things have headed out maybe 2 weeks ahead of normal. Looks like the rain is going to miss them. That would save them here. It's got to happen super fast if it did. When I look at this wheat market, it's went up a lot. But did we price ourselves out of the world export market now? Are we uncompetitive with this rally?
Yeah, we might have, Mike. I mean, you look at a 30-cent rally yesterday in the wheat market, and I'm kind of looking at how it supports the other markets. We could only muster a 2-cent rally in the corn market yesterday. I think that's a little disappointing. But yeah, like you said, I think this wheat rally probably does put us out of the global market a little bit.
And then by the time you look at on winter wheat specifically, you go up another 30 cents or so around today's close. You've got a lot of option exposure around $7, I know. So it's going to be a very difficult road if you go more than 30 cents higher on that winter wheat market to try to break through that level. So a lot of significant resistance between priced out of the export market globally. We still have a lot of old crop, and you're looking at a situation where most of the weather's probably ran its course on the wheat market, but that $7 level, it's going to be a big resistance number to try to break through. So what can you tell me about, we had a pretty massive rally yesterday. What can you tell me about the sell-off today and some of the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, I think a lot of the sell-off today had to do maybe with like I said, outside markets, like the crude oil market, we look right now. I mean, it's only down $1. We were down about $2 earlier, but maybe just geopolitical tensions easing just a touch today maybe had to do with it selling off today.
How about on the soybean side of things? We early week, we had a pretty good soybean rally. We pushed up within a penny of old contract highs on November soybeans. Soybean oil traded to 3-year highs. What were some of the reasons you thought for soybeans and soybean oil running up?
Yeah, Mike, I think a lot of the reason for the soybean rally, I mean, we're seeing really strong domestic crush and demand. Continue to, crush a lot of soybeans domestically, and also just the whole geopolitical tension deal and the crude oil being at higher levels just overall increases the odds of us crushing more soybeans, I think, because crushers are making more money. So I think a couple of those reasons together is kind of why we saw, multi-year highs in the soybean oil market.
I would say so as well. Something to keep an eye on there as we've really punched higher, especially in more new crop. Old crop here, it just doesn't seem like the spread action I've seen where July to like November, for example, has gotten under 20 cents now this week. It just wouldn't appear that the funds think that the trade talks or deal that is supposed to happen on the 14th and 15th of May doesn't look like they're going to buy old crop soybeans. If a deal gets done, hopefully that means they're still going to buy a lot of new crop beans. Maybe they're not going to have the soybean acres in the United States as well. The RVO news recently has been very optimistic as well. So they've kind of held the new crop months up at some higher levels, pushed contract highs. Old crop really, if you want to look at the most boring chart ever, Jaden, that July soybean contract, it's not just been super sideways lately, but in this uptrend here lately as well, it's been very boring. So some very interesting things to keep an eye on. Drought maps, interesting to keep an eye on, I think, going forward as well. Most of the Corn Belt's pretty white, specifically the Eastern Corn Belt. Almost all of the South United States, super drought. Almost all of the West United States, pretty drought. Kind of just the fringe areas getting pressured there a little bit, Jaden. So those are some of the main things that I know we're talking about here this week with our row crop guys in the United States. Any final thoughts for our listeners this week that you're keeping an eye on?
Thing I'm keeping an eye on a little bit is just the corn market. December corn chart's starting to look pretty good here, and with the whole fertilizer situation and the the whole story of maybe some corn acres being flipped to beans, I think I can paint a pretty bullish picture going forward here in the corn market.
On the outside market news and just money flow, I would argue the equities, along with a few other things, really taking a risk-on perspective. S&P 500 back up to record highs. The crude oil market's kind of settled back a little bit here too. So it seems like you are looking at more of a risk-on trade lately, I think, money flow-wise, and that's been favoring some of these other outside investments and kind of going away from some of the inflation hedging and whatnot. So keep an eye on that. But thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, Jaden.